In this lesson, we'll be updating our Google Maps plugin in preparation to using Google Places autocomplete. It lets you search for destinations around the globe and offers suggestions as you type. Once you make a selection, it returns rich information about the location, including latitude and longitude coordinates. Let's get started. Open your editor to the Maps plugin. The first thing we'd normally do is create a new script tag and link to the new Google Places library. But since we used the library's parameter when we first included Google Maps, it's already covered. Google automatically includes and loads all the necessary files to make everything work. Now remember all the work we did to make sure our code didn't blow up when Google Maps wasn't ready? Well, we have to do the same for Google Places autocomplete too. Since it will be in the header, it'll always be trying to load. Depending on the page, Maps might be trying to load at the same time. I think we need something a little more robust. Here's the general idea. If a function is called and it needs Google and it's not ready, we'll add the function call to an array to be ran later, whenever Google is ready. Let's start by refactoring our current map wait logic. Delete map waiting. In its place, create a variable called waiting and make it an array. Next, let's go over to show map. Here, we'll check if Google is loaded. If not, we'll add the function arguments to our waiting array. Let's start by clearing the function. Create an if statement that checks if map loaded is false. Inside the if, push an array object onto waiting. Inside that object, we're going to pass two things. The first is a reference to the current function, so we can call it later. Add a property called fn, as in function, with the value of showMap. Notice it's not in quotes. Next, we'll pass all the arguments our function just received, so we can pass them back to showMap later. JavaScript has a handy way to do this through a special variable called arguments. It's an array of all the arguments passed to the current function. To make things simple, let's use the shorthand syntax and just add arguments to our object. This will make a property called arguments with the value of arguments. Now, we don't want to do anything else if the map isn't loaded, so add a return inside the if. Great, so now everything after this if, we can assume that Google is loaded. Take all the contents from render map, move it under the if, and remove render map. Nice. Now all we have to do is update init map to run any functions that are waiting. Let's start by clearing everything but the top line. Since waiting is an array, let's use the array forEach method. ForEach takes a function as an argument. It executes that function for every item in the array, while passing the current item as the argument. Let's use a forEach on our waiting variable and pass it an anonymous function using item as the function argument. Inside our anonymous function, let's check if item.fn is of type function. Inside the if, call item.fn just like a normal function and pass a spread of the item arguments. Now that our queue is all ran or flushed, let's clear the queue by setting it to an empty array. Nice work! At this point, everything should still work. Let's save and go to our property page in the browser. Make sure to do a full page refresh to test our initial loading changes. There are only two other minor tweaks, and honestly, they're optional. Since we'll be dealing with more than just maps, having a variable called mapLoaded may be a little misleading inside this plugin. Let's just update it to isLoaded. The last one is the initMap function. Since we're calling this function from inside the plugin, let's be a little more explicit and rename it init Google Maps. That way, in the future, we don't get confused with an actual map functionality. And save. And let's double check it one more time. Perfect. Alright, now that we have our plugin refactored, it'll be much easier to add new functionality that requires Google to be loaded. Next up, let's add Google Places autocomplete to our header.